I've been waiting for this for quite some time, and I feel more confident that there are many people with the same story, although it's sad that everybody has the same story.
Yeah.
But I think just seeing and reading what I have, it just makes me feel more confident with that. Okay. If there are questions, by all means ask. I was like, I should probably think about what to say and did not think about it. And
That's
I
okay.
tried for many years to not think about it as much as possible. There's something about knowing that there's something wrong in the world and feeling like you don't have any power to change that. Yeah, I think still recovering from the whole Iraq experience, not just with Sean, but that was definitely a rough spot. So how I did not know who Sean was, didn't follow him on social media. I had no idea who he was when I think I found the burn internship is how I got connected. I did that internship. Kelly was my whatever your team leader, preceptor, or whatever the title was.
Yeah, was that the burn field training?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Okay.
did like all the stuff on,
Yeah.
and then we would like meet. Gosh, that's so hazy. It was so long ago. But I even get connected with that guy. And it was through, I did that online and I loved that. And then they reached out to me. I was in Jordan at the time doing full-time missions with another organization and wanting to make a change because I didn't have a team. So I wanted to see if I could find a team in the Middle East. And I ended up going and meeting, doing a short-term trip to Iraq, not realizing that they were getting ready to replace the entire team, the original team. I could tell when I was there that there were things that were not right. And they told us that they were actively recruiting to replace the whole team. And then I think they recruited me after the fact. I think somebody asked me to consider joining it, and I had told them no because I just felt like it was weird that the whole team that loved missions and loved Iraq and wanted to stay in missions all wanted to leave at the same time. And I had asked them about that later. I told them no. I was in the States for a few months. I was physically assaulted in Jordan. And so I took 4 months off in the States to recover. And I told them that I was recovering and that I didn't think it was a good time for me to make a commitment or make a decision like that. And I had some concerns about the team leaving and some of the infrastructure as far as safety and just having regular guidelines that other missions organizations have. They didn't seem to have much in place. And then they came back to me later and really just recruited pretty hard because they needed a team lead over there. It didn't really occur to me at the time that they were having such a hard time replacing that team and getting people to sign up. So I flew out to Reading last minute on my own dime, of course, and met with them and did I don't even know if we did training, what we did, but I met Aspen and Becky. I don't even know we did. It was supposed to be training. And then we met Andrew and Kirsten at that time.
Hey, Keri, I just had a question. So when you were saying they were recruiting you or reaching out and asking if you'd be a part of the team, who is they? Do you remember really or?
I want to say it was Andrew.
Okay.
I feel like he emailed me. I tried to look back to my emails, but I don't have them. I deleted an email that was hacked, and I think all my emails from them were in there.
Okay.
Fortunate. Had one from Sean that I wish I would have kept, but yeah.
I imagine so. Yeah, that's okay.
So I think it was Andrew because he said that him and Kirsten were like newly overseeing the project, I guess, the Light a Candle project, and that some of the problems that they had before were now going to be resolved because they've got Andrew and Kirsten and their oversight, and they're going to be visiting in country more and all of those kinds of things that I had some of the things that I had mentioned that they said, oh yeah, we're going to develop it and we'll be present. And, we value your input and making it a better thing and safety
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
all of that kind of stuff.
When was that? What year would you say that was?
It would have been the end of 2018. It
Okay.
was Thanksgiving of 2018 that I flew out there, actually, or right after. So they were getting us ready. They had decided that me and Aspen and Becky were going to be this team. And there was another girl, Callie, who was on that short-term trip that I went on.
I remember Aspen when I came on the trip and you were already like settled there.
Yeah, it was Aspen and I don't, Callie may have been gone already. When we were in Pasadena for a few days, I don't know what we were doing for training, but I remember it was weird. There was some sort of friction with Becky. She was being very, I don't know, she just seemed really unhappy and edgy, and we were all a little concerned about her coming. Although she's being this way in the States, I don't know what this is going to be like when we all live in a house together. And something happened, and they talked with her and told her that she would not be joining the team, and she left. In Cali, I feel so bad for these young girls, especially like Callie, like gave up her apartment, gave up her job, just did all of this stuff, and she came out and we went in the beginning of January of 2019, moved into the old Light a Candle house. And when I get there, I found out that Callie really didn't have enough monthly support and that they knew that sending her out there. And, we all, we have to pay for all of our flights and everything else. And then we were told that if we wanted to move to a different house, because there was like an unfinished attic or something up there, and there was like water damage and tons of mold and just junk everywhere. And I was very concerned about being in a house with lots of mold. And they told us that if we were going to move somewhere else or get furniture or do anything else like that, that money would have to come out of our donors, which for me was rough because I lost a bunch of donors switching organizations, and these two were just getting started. So that was a little bit of a stressor and something I didn't really agree with. And there was a lot of pressure to start social media and promoting a lot, which I'm not going to say that doesn't happen really everywhere if you have visibility, but it didn't take very long for me to see that there was a lot of emphasis on raising money for the organization. And I didn't understand how, if they were doing all of these other projects and money was coming in, that why we were having to take that out of our personal donor. And none of that was discussed before I went. Obviously, overseas, like I would not have agreed to that stateside. It's hard once you're in it to say, like, well, what am I going to do? I don't want to stay in this house. I don't think it's healthy for us to be there. So that was a point of contention early on. Callie ended up being sent home also, not by me. There was some concern about her maybe being too extroverted there, not really understanding the cultural norms, and that maybe being a safety issue. So we did talk about that, but they ended up sending her home quite abruptly, and then I never heard from her again. And I always wondered if they had told her that I had sent her home, because out of the two, I felt like Callie was at least agreeable to learning and changing and taking advice and growing into her role. And Aspen was a lot more like dead set, like nobody's going to tell me what to do. And I was like, well, if I have to choose between the two, I would have actually taken Callie and taught her how to build her budget a little bit. But they did send her home too. So then it's just Aspen and I. Aspen's never done much missions. She's not familiar with the Middle East other than a short-term trip that she had done. I had to fly back to the States in February, which they knew, for a sinus surgery. So Aspen had just turned 21 and she was there by herself for 2 weeks. Now they are a pretty close-knit community there, and there was some families that kind of took her under their wing, but she's still like leaving the house at night to go flip the breaker. And even people knowing that there's a single American girl alone in a house in Iraq is not safe. And they do watch. Like, we are definitely being scrutinized and watched. So I felt uncomfortable the whole time I was in the States that she was there by herself. And I did tell them that wasn't safe either.
I just had a question, if you don't mind. When you were saying they sent her home, is that Andrew and Kirsten again?
I don't know who made that decision, to be honest. And then there was a guy, Joe, I don't know if that's how you say his name, is Canadian guy, who
Yep.
was like our stateside. I don't know what their different roles were. It was like Kirsten
Mhm.
and Andrew, and then like Joe was supposed to be over our team and connecting with us. They're supposed to be checking in with Joe, and we would have all these things. We make a little list to get ready for our meeting with them every couple weeks or so. And then like we just didn't have his like understanding of what was going on, or like he undivided attention. And I just felt like both Aspen and I both felt like things just were not being heard, being fixed, being addressed. We kind of just felt like we were out there. We
Yeah.
found out that Sean was coming to visit for a distribution in refugee camp. So he was coming out, and that I had not met him. And I think by then we had already had another short term team come pretty quickly. We really hit the ground running. Like there was no time to just adjust or like get to know each other. I felt super stressed. Felt like I had a lot of responsibility and a lot of things I had to do right now. I had to renew the NGO to, I don't know, there were just all sorts of things I had to do in country that in the Middle East, everything takes forever. And then we were immediately hosting another small team and then getting ready for a big distribution. Zach, and I don't remember Zach's last name, but he was involved in I think, in the burn doing worship and stuff. And I
Yeah.
heard him saying to me, he's like, "Oh, you've never met Sean." And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Just don't be offended when you meet him." I was like, that's a weird thing to say, but okay, I'll keep that in mind. So we did this big distribution in the refugee camp. Sean came over for it. I think the first time Aspen said something to me, because she was pretty starry-eyed about him, and I think that she was hoping that she would be doing worship with him and that kind of stuff. I'd never heard him or anyone promise her that kind of a thing, but I also feel like that was a way that they kind of kept people compliant in a way, is that kind of hope of being able to reach your dreams and do kinds of things that you wouldn't have had the opportunity to do before because of his platform. And then we were definitely having some conflict. I was really, really worried about safety, having already been in the Middle East for a couple of years, and also knowing how the Middle East is, and being attacked physically by someone after I'd already been there. I was really worried about Aspen. She just wanted to like do what she wanted to do. And I didn't want to be responsible for something happening to her that she may potentially not recover from. And then she wanted to hang out a lot. And I just felt really so stressed and so busy with just getting tasks done. And it was hard to get her to understand that. They did not tell her that I was the team lead, which, really wasn't something that was important to me. But once she found out, like, oh, we're not co-leaders, that really like bothered her. I felt like they just set a precedent for problems by not making things clear. I don't feel like I'm a very authoritative person, and especially in that case, but it bothered her that I had a lot of responsibility and she didn't have. I think she felt like she wasn't trusted. So anyways, we're having some conflict already. Sean's on the way over, and then I think the first thing I noticed, she actually noticed on his social media before he got there, is we had maybe, I can't remember if we'd raised money or if there wasn't money, but he had said something like, "I've got $1.00 amount in my pocket in the plane on the way to Iraq to give refugees food," or something. I was very specific about having this in my pocket or whatever. She came down to me and said, "Look at this. Like, this is not true." And I was like, "Yeah, it's not." I had already kind of noticed things like that with him. And I didn't want to be the person to really say that kind of stuff to her. I don't know what kind of purpose that would have served at the time. But that was the first thing that she noticed. And she was really upset about it because it was a blatant lie. And she knew that. Like, we either hadn't raised money or he wasn't bringing money, but something about it, like, It just wasn't close to the truth at all. And then he flew over, he stayed at a hotel. And I think either we were wondering or we were told that that money that he used to fly over and stay at the hotel came out of the Light a Candle Fund instead of his own personal fundraising or whatever, that it was the Light a Candle Fund. And we were thinking, like, you're telling us to raise money out of our own donor base for Light a Candle home that doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the organization that people would, come and stay in. And at that point, early on, I was like, I don't think I'm going to be the one staying here for very long. So I'm not going to spend money on a place like it's my house. I'm not going to be here probably. But we were bothered by the fact that he was using that money for a flight and a hotel and not having to fundraise himself, it seemed like. I did not ask him about that. I had emailed him prior and I had several points about things that I felt like needed to happen, which were things I had said stateside to Andrew and Kirsten, just about developing, like having some policies and how to address conflict. Like, what are we doing for team building? What are we doing for safety? What is the issue with finances? Just how do we have support? I wanted to be on a team so that we had support and had a more healthy situation to be in, and that kind of stuff. And I told them, I said, I don't feel like, in the emails, that I don't feel like I can continue on this team long term unless we really figure out some of these issues. I wanted them to know that those were serious issues and they weren't something that I could wait a year or two to do. And he emailed back and was like, whoa, this is kind of like this, something like, this is crazy. Like, you're catching me by surprise. I'm like, I don't know why this is a surprise, because I've been saying a lot of this stuff since the beginning. And there were no accusations. I didn't talk about really his finances. Said, like, we have to figure out how Light a Candle is going to be self-supporting and it's not going to be taken out of my donor base. Like, we don't have enough money to do that. Aspen definitely didn't have enough money to do that. But there were no accusations or things at that time. I just think I was being assertive about saying, like, here are some bullet points and we resolve these while you're here in country. He just acted like this is wild. Like, whoa. And when he came, he definitely didn't really talk to me very much at all. And he definitely catered to Aspen, like being her little buddy and, all that kind of personal inside jokes and things like that. And it just felt like he was working in the room. And I felt like he must sense I'm on my way out or unhappy. And he's going to do whatever he can to keep her happy so that he'll still have a team here. And I think, Kelly, I think you guys came around that time. I was already miserable by the time you guys got there. I was like, maybe I hope somebody will notice. But at the same time, I didn't feel comfortable saying anything. I went there in January and I think I resigned in March. I gave a notice in March and I said I would stay. I don't remember. I think I would stay the rest of the year. Did I resign in March or May? Sorry. Maybe I resigned in May. I was thinking about it in March and I waited 2 months even. We moved to a different house. It was still just the two of us. They kept saying other people were coming and nobody was coming. I actually ended up being friends with the Becky girl from Pasadena that was let go off of the team. And she said, oh, yeah, I knew that wasn't going to work out. And I was already really upset with Sean and those leaders. And that's why I was acting that way. I don't remember what her specific issues were, but we ended up becoming friends in country. And it made me feel a little bit less crazy that I was the girl who didn't really like Sean. Everybody else really seemed pretty enamored with him. I think in May, I had a call with them. I said, hey, I just think that I'm going to have to resign. I don't want to leave anybody, high and dry. I don't want to leave Aspen here, but I don't think that I can do this. I'll resign and I'll stay the rest of the year. So they were like, can we have a call? And this was Ruthie and Andrew and Kirsten. I don't remember. I think they had let Joe go by then too. Something happened with Joe and they let him go. And we never heard from him again. And in that conversation, the and Andrew and Kirsten were pretty much like, so we think we know what this is about. Like, is this about Sean? And I was like, yeah. And they were very good at gaslighting me in that conversation and just saying like, well, don't you know, all the ways that they darvo you with biblical principles and do you think you're overreacting? And I don't know, just really minimizing the things that I had concern about. So we just left it at that. There wasn't really any resolution. They were just like, okay, well, we're really sad to see you go. We'll accept your resignation. Thank you for staying for the rest of the year. And then at that time, then Iran was acting up, and it was kind of the first time we'd experienced that. Aspen's parents got really scared and they pulled her from country, which I supported 100%. I felt like if her parents were terrified and she was really scared too, that there was no problem with that. We were doing some projects, but I didn't see how having a terrified family was more important than what we were doing at the time. And so she left and they were not happy with her. They gave her, Ruthie specifically gave her a hard time about leaving. I'm like, she's 21 and she's scared. And they were like, our first team never left. They always stayed there. I'm like, well, you have different people now, and it's not appropriate for you to put some sort of project that hasn't even started. They had some project they wanted to start in the camp. I don't remember what it was, but they were like, well, now that's not going to start. And I'm like, well, it can start later. It's not really moving that fast. Nothing in the Middle East moves fast. I think she left for maybe 2 weeks and then came back. We hosted another team. Peter was leading that team. I could tell that somebody had talked to Peter because there were a lot of private conversations with him and Aspen. And he kept telling me, I love you. We love you. And it just felt really weird. I just could tell that there had been conversations, and I always felt like they were always building a narrative about me just in case I decided to say something. Or yeah, I just kind of felt like that was happening around me without really knowing the specifics. I could feel that shift. So that team came and left in August. I don't remember what I was asking Ruthie about. We were communicating about something. I'm assuming it was finances since she was our finance person. And then the next, I think an hour later, I think they let me know. They were like, hey, we just don't think that you should finish out the year. And I said, agree, done. Oh, I wrapped that up. I think that they were bringing in next, because I was like, well, what, like, you're just going to leave Aspen here by herself while there's a transition? And that is what they did. They left her there. She was in that house by herself. Again, she had a lot of the community around her, but I still disagree with that decision for her safety. And then maybe it was just the two of them for a little bit. I don't remember. And then I think another girl came and then a guy. I never really met them. I knew because I had met her, I think when I was in Pasadena or something. I had met her before and she had come on a trip before, and that's why. You know what? It wasn't Pasadena. I flew to Pasadena and then we went to Redding. We were in Redding. That's where I met first. But she came on a short-term trip too. So after that, I really didn't have very much contact with them, with the team on the ground or the administrative team. The next year, Kirsten and Andrew reached out to me and they asked me, they said they were going to be in country and if I wanted to get coffee. They just wanted to check and make sure I was okay. I met with them and I felt like it was a conversation just to make sure that I knew that I was not very forgiving towards Sean. Mind you, I had not said anything about this publicly at all. And at that point, really wasn't something I was focused on. I was focused on just getting as far away from it as possible. So I don't know why they reached out to me really to have that conversation to make sure I was okay. But it really felt like they just wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to say anything. They wanted to make sure we were good. I think they straight up asked me if I was going to say anything. And I remember being surprised at their boldness. I said that I really wasn't. I didn't really feel like it was going to have any sort of impact. I had already tried to talk to them and I had already tried to do the right thing. And it just seemed like it just seemed like if I were to say something to somebody, it wasn't going to go anywhere because that's kind of what had already happened. And who would I tell? I don't know people outside of that group, and everybody in the group that I've been around associated with Sean had done the same thing, and they were very, very loyal to him in spite of what they said were not great qualities. Nobody ever mentioned finances to me. I suspected that there were some things that were wrong, but I didn't have any proof. But just the way that he was really comfortable spinning stories and being just a like he's very good at knowing how to manipulate people. He seemed to be an expert in that to me back then. And so I also didn't feel like if I were to say anything that I felt like there would be a lot of backlash. They had kind of alluded to saying like, oh, you had that thing in Jordan and that guy attacked you and you just maybe need some downtime because you've got some PTSD. And just when we would have conversations, that would come up as though that was the issue here instead of all the other things that were happening. I didn't really feel like I had a voice, really. I will say I did when Aspen went, I tried to, I guess, connect with Sean. I had his WhatsApp, his direct number. And I think he had just reached out and said, like, I know you're there by yourself. Are you okay? Because Aspen had left. And he was like, yeah, it's so awesome, but you're so epic to stay there or something along those lines. And so I had his direct number. I knew that was his number. So I tried to just I don't know, whatever, build a bridge. And I sent him an old picture that I had of his dad. I did a mission trip with his dad in, I don't know, a long time, not knowing that they were connected or anything like that. It was just a huge coincidence. But I had a picture of his dad with a local in Africa. And so I sent that to him and said, oh, I found this in my old pictures. Thought you might like seeing that. And then he posted it on his social media and just made up a story like, this is my dad leading this leader to Christ. And I was like, wow, he just does not think I'm going to see that or what. But that was also pretty telling. I mean, it was like immediate too. I sent it to him and it was on social media pretty quickly. So I wish I had more details. A lot of it is so hazy because I was so exhausted.
Doing great.
The only other Sorry, thanks. The only other thing I could think of later is that when I asked Ruthie like the next year for a W-2 or a 1099, I got like a handwritten document. I don't know if that's a legal thing or not. I actually had never thought about it. I was so stressed about trying to figure out how to do my taxes with that. And I just had a lot of that. It was so odd the way that they did things, or it was different from my organization before. And so I didn't think about the fact, I mean, I thought, well, this is weird, but not anything more than that. And I actually just told my husband about it recently. He's like, I'm not sure that that's okay. I'm pretty sure those have to be official documents. So I don't know if that is important in the story of things, but I did use it to file my taxes that year. So, but definitely a high turnover. I've noticed that team is continuously turned over. Even the thing about it is people are all in and then they get there and something happens and they're not all in. I was all in and then she wasn't. She left. And of course, she had a very diplomatic exit reason that I didn't believe. I never talked to her about it. I didn't feel like I wanted to stir up trouble and I didn't want to make things harder for these girls than it was if I didn't have a solution for it. But and I'm sure that they had already been told that I have mental health problems. So, yeah, but I did notice that they had a lot of turnover. I don't even know if they still have a team there. I hope that they don't.
There is a team there, but there's been a lot of turnover. This is very a repetitive cycle. We'll just say that. They did start sending families there more recently in the more recent years versus single groups of people. So the family that there is there currently literally just started like a few, or maybe isn't even there yet because the previous family left in January. I'm not sure how long that family was there, but lots of turnover. I don't know, Cal, you might have followed a little bit closer with Light a Candle after, after these years. I didn't. I went on one trip, but we were pretty much, we ran the whole thing. And there was nothing that they had to do with our trip. It was just us.
And you were in Africa, weren't you,
I
Christy,
was in
when you went?
Africa, yeah,
Yeah.
on my trip. I never went to Iraq. But
Mhm.
I don't know if you remember, Cal, was there another group of people?
I could be totally wrong, but I don't think it was too long after and then Aspen left that it was Andrew and Kirsten who moved there. Were you still living there, Keri, when they moved there?
I remember when Aspen left, I was still there with the locals, kind of threw a little going away party.
No.
So what was your time frame total over there, Carrie? Was it like you said, 2018?
Mm,
When did you actually come back, even from the other organization,
in Iraq or in the Middle East?
and just overseas?
Overseas. Went full time in 2016 and I was in Jordan until I moved to Iraq in 2019, in January of 2019. That was when I moved over there for Light a Candle. And then I left Light a Candle in August of that same year officially. Resigned in May, left in August officially. And then I stayed until July of 2021. I came back.
Okay.
Yeah, so you were there for a bit after leaving Light a Candle.
Yeah, I was there
Yeah.
for a bit. Yeah. And like all of COVID, we were locked in there for a minute. I loved the church and Pastor. And I think I felt more comfortable with locals because that's how I started in Jordan. Had friends with the Western people as well. It's just hard to be over there. There's a lot of conflict on those teams too, but it's not the same level or same type of conflict as the Light a Candle stuff. And they all knew that. They were like, we wish you would have asked us when you came on that trip or just reached out to us. But it's so hard to do that in that world. Nobody in ministry wants to say bad things about someone else in ministry. We're all so conditioned not to do it. None of those people, like when I started talking about what was going on, they were 100%, yeah, not a good situation. We've had conversations with the first team and kind of advised them, and yeah, wish you weren't in this situation. Let us know how we could support you. But they generally all, I don't know any of the Westerners there that are a fan of Sean or the leadership, though they were still awesome in really taking in all of the people who were coming over. But it became an issue though, because the locals knew they're a different culture, but they're not dumb. Like they see the turnover, they see the conflict, they see the showiness, and that really impacts your ability to do stuff there. So in a way, like I think the expat community wanted to take these young people from Light a Candle under their wing because they didn't have a covering there. But at the same time, being associated with them with different things made it difficult to do ministry. I know that Pastor Church was not a fan. He didn't really trust them, trust us. I mean, I was a part of that. By the time I joined them under their covering, he just said, yeah, there's just issues and it's not very trust building. Safety is a big thing there, especially American Westerners can leave if you become a target by unsafe people there if you're doing ministry, but the locals can't leave, and we put them at risk by the social media. I think that was one of the things, is that Sean wanted such a strong social media presence, and it really does put people at risk, and he just always seemed to downplay that. Like, these people cannot be seen. The people that we're reaching out to or people who have converted, they can't be seen, and they should be in control of that at all times. He didn't seem to really care about that. He wanted to have a strong social media. I think that was even a requirement, not discussed before I joined, afterwards.
When you were talking about the team that came over when I was there, I did not think you were miserable at all. Just so you know, I didn't. My perspective, I remember at the time. Well, and I've shared this with Christy too, and other people who've had similar stories. I remember at the time being thankful that Josh was with me because I felt like Sean respected me more as like being there with my husband and included me in conversations and things more. I remember, Zach was our team leader.
So he was there at the same time as you guys. I saw
Mhm.
all like blobbed together.
I bet because you probably how I don't know if you even would know how many teams you ended up hosting, but
I was exhausted. I was
yeah.
already burnt out by the time you guys got there.
So with that, if it was when Zach came, that was the first time you met Sean.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was the first and only time I've met.
I kind of remember that it was like, oh, Sean's coming, and just we did have that big distribution and all that. And my feeling was that you were very organized and wanted things kind of. And I don't remember honestly if you shared it with us or not, but I think you did share a little bit about like, I'm glad he's coming. I need some answers to some things. We need some organization. We need some stuff figured out. And I could see Sean was just like not gonna even like give any time for any of that. He was like there to do what he needed to do. I think he showed us his film when we were there. And he was just very like when you said he seemed to pay more attention to Aspen. I don't necessarily remember like the details of that, but I remember feeling like he was avoiding any kind of serious like, hey, let's get some logistics figured out, let's get some stuff figured out, and was very like, you gotta go with the flow, Keri. You gotta, oh my gosh, you're so, why are you worried about stuff? And I definitely remember feeling that way, like, oh gosh, this is how this guy deals with people who are probably asking very legitimate questions and need some real information while he's here on the ground. So just, I don't know, not that you need any validation in any of that, but it was from mine and Josh's perspective, you could see that he kind of had an agenda of the things he wanted to cover and wasn't really taking care of some of the things that were you would expect. This is your team leader on the ground, and when you going to cover some of those things. And then was on that team too.
Okay.
Yeah.
The team.
Yeah. So that was that team. You mentioned, I can't remember the word you used, that there was kind of like a documented reason you gave for leaving. Do you remember that or?
Got her newsletter. I think I was on her newsletter list, and she had said like she was leaving to go get more specific training in an area or something like that. But again, I think she sounded like she wanted to go get some specific training somewhere and then come back to the Middle East, just not with Light a Candle. And I remember thinking, well, that's interesting because that's what the first team said. Like, we're still all called to the Middle East, regardless of whether they came back or not. That's what they all really felt when they left. They just wanted to be with someone else in the Middle East and not with Sean. And it was the same way. She was 100% in, all about it, all about Sean, all about Light a Candle and all the stuff. And so that was interesting to me that when someone who's so invested in it wants to just do the same thing, but not with the same people.
I think that it's really important, at least for me, as I'm hearing this, is that why I'm so thankful that you're sharing with us is because there's a lot of young 21-year-olds that have this dream and this vision, and they're still being called over to the Middle East because that's what the Lord wants. But to be able, for your perspective, to maybe help somebody else go, actually, these are things that this is not how this type of organization should be run. And that I'm sure. And that it's important to have these measures put in place. And it's not that you can't protect everybody from something happening to them, but those are things to look out for. And just that this is really a facade of an organization. And it's built off of a social media platform and somebody that lies and somebody that promotes it for his own benefit. I just want to say that I'm so sorry. I'm sorry because in some ways, I don't feel responsible in the way of like, I should have done something to help support you. I'm sorry that I was unaware I promoted Light a Candle. We hosted because I wasn't going. I wanted to be able to promote and support people that would go. And So I just want to say that I'm sorry that you were not supported. And I was a leader in the burn organization, and Light a Candle was considered the missions arm of the burn. And so it's just devastating to me that, number one, that you were treated so horribly as a woman, as a leader, as a believer, as a missionary, and that your voice was not heard. You were more than just gaslit, in my opinion. Like, you were basically made to feel and basically told that you were the problem, and that if you spoke up, then there was going to be a retaliative measure.
Yeah.
And that is not the word.
Yeah.
I'm just devastated. I'm just devastated by this. And I'm so sorry. And I just thank you for just sharing and telling us about it, because I think that it's really important to be able, I mean, not just for your own, for me, coming out and telling my story was really a part of my own healing process. And for a lot of people, that is the case, but I'm just sorry. I really am. And you sound so like grounded, and I don't know how your walk is with the Lord, and I don't know, like, what your journey's been ever since then. But, like, I feel such peace around you. And I just feel like, that I know it's probably not been easy transition coming back, especially after being overseas for so long. But, I just am thankful for you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for reaching out. And thank you for taking a stand. It was like at some point, somebody's going to do something. I don't know when that is, but I'm just counting the minutes.
Yeah.
It's so hard to watch young people, well, any people, but I can't imagine being a really young person like Aspen or Callie and being so excited and having such a terrible experience. I'm glad that I'd already had an experience that was good with older missionaries and other people and locals, all that kind of stuff. That was their whole experience. And that can change you forever, change your walk with the Lord, change everything. They are young, impressionable people. I don't know how anybody with a conscience can just do that over and over and over and over and over. I kept thinking, it's going to end after Aspen leaves. It's going to end after leaves. These people aren't going to last. And I cannot believe that it's still going. It really is it's like a phantom organization. I was like, there's literally nothing here but a name. So it's a bummer that people give up their whole lives. It's so much work to go on the mission field. It is so much work. And people sacrifice a lot to do that, and they get their donors to sacrifice a lot. It makes me sad that so many people have experienced that. I hope that all of this just turns into a way of healing for everybody that's experienced that. Thank you for doing what you're doing.